mode, the mode, me, median, the mode. Come on, everybody, so here we go. The 3 M's that you really need to know. The mean, median, the mode. So, me, median, the mode. Everybody, come on, so here we go. The 3 M's.
Hello and welcome to the Kearney Math Show. Thank you all for tuning in today. On today's episode of the Kearney Math Show, we are going to be featuring a brand new unit in which we are going to be discussing Unit 10, Statistics. So take a moment before we begin and write entry number 1 at the top of your mini lesson and read your learning goal. So our learning goal for this lesson is that by the end of today, I want you to be able to explain how to find the measures of center. So some of these things you talked about last year. So this should really be a good review for you guys. So last year you talked a lot about mean, median, mode, and range, and we're going to talk about that this year. But we might just, instead of finding it for one group of data set, we're going to be finding it for 2 groups of data. So before we get started, let's talk about some vocabulary that's super important. So one thing is a statistical question. So when you hear the word statistical question, you know it's got to be a question, but what's it a question about? So a statistical question is a question that is used to collect data. So we're going to use it we're going to find something out, we're going to collect the data, and then we're probably going to analyze it. So maybe if I wanted to ask a statistical question about how many siblings does everyone in this class have, I could go around and ask everyone and collect the data and then analyze it. And guys, just for the record, I'm going to be trying something a little different to see if the volume is better today. I'm going to be, instead of writing at my board, I'm going to be just clicking from my computer so that the volume is a little bit better. So I'm going to click and then I'm going to give you a moment to write things down. So a statistical question, that question that we use to collect data. Well, when we are collecting data, we first need to figure out, well, who are we wanting to ask this question? And that's going to be our population. Population is the group of people that we want to ask. So for example, if I had a question about 7th graders, I would say my population is a 7th grade. And so population is a group with similar characteristics. For example, if I was asking 7th graders, they would all have in common that they're in 7th grade. I might decide to ask a question of middle school students, and they would have in common they're all in middle school. So population is my big group of people that I'm collecting my data from, okay? Now, sample. Sometimes we don't have time to go around and ask everyone in the population. I may not have time to go around and ask every single 7th grader how many siblings they have. So I might decide to just take a sample from that population. And the sample is a smaller part of the population. It's just a part. It's just a piece of the population, a part of the whole. So population is my whole 7th grade. Sample is the small group of people that I asked from that population. So when you decide that you want to ask this statistical question, you need to figure out who your population is, who's going to be the sample from that population, and then you want to make sure your sample is reasonable. For example, if I wanted to find out where the 7th graders wanted to go on a field trip, would it be very fair if I only asked the girls? Probably not, because the girls might want to go somewhere different than the boys. Would it only be fair if I asked just the kids in my math club? No, because they may not like the same things that other people like. So when you are picking your sample of who you want to ask, you need to make sure that it is 3 things. You need to make sure that it is random. So I'm not just asking the people that I like, or I'm not just going to the people who I know is going to say the same thing that I would say. So I want to be random. I want it to be representative of the population. And by representative of the population, I mean, if I want to do a survey on 7th grade students, I'm not going to go ask the 6th graders, because that wouldn't be representative of what 7th graders would like. Okay, so you want it to be random. You want it to represent who you're trying to find out about, and then you also want it to be large enough. Like if I'm wanting to plan a field trip and I want to know where the 7th graders want to go, I don't want to just go and ask 2 people. I want my sample to be large enough that it's a good representation of everyone in my population. Okay. Now, Guys, as I'm going through this, if for some reason I am going faster than what you can write down, please remember that you can always pause your Edpuzzle video to take time to write it. Okay, so don't hesitate to pause if you need to. Okay, so first of all, we figured out what's my question I'm going to ask. Who are the people I'm wanting to ask it about? Out of that big population, who's going to be my smaller part? Is it reasonable? And then when you're asking the question, you probably want to figure out, is my question going to be one of the two types of data? So there are two types of data you can collect, either categorical or numerical, okay? So if something is categorical, what do you hear when you hear categorical? I hear categories. So categorical would be, if you ask them, their answers would be in words. For example, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite subject? What's your favorite food? What TV show do you normally watch? So categorical would be certain words or answers, okay? So like, for example, down here, what is your favorite subject? Okay. Numerical, what do you hear when I say the word numerical? Sounds like number, right? So what do you think the answers are going to be? Numbers. So your answers are numbers. So for example, I could ask, well, how many siblings do you have? How many pets do you have? What's your height? How many pairs of shoes do you have? So categorical would be words we could put into categories. Numerical would be numbers that we would then use to analyze. Okay. So take a moment if you need to and go back and read over those vocabulary words. Okay. Next thing, we are going to talk about this problem here. It says Plains Middle School is considering the following location for a grade 7 field trip. They are trying to decide whether we're going to do a science museum, state park, or ballet company. The principal wants to survey a sample of students to find which location 7th grade students would prefer. Do you think the following are good surveys? Why or why not? Okay, so first one, if the principal wants to know where we should go on the 7th grade field trip, should he just ask members of the science club? Probably not, because science club, where are they going to say they want to go? They're probably going to want to go to the science museum. Okay, so I want you to read over the next two and figure out whether you think they are good answers or not. And we're going to discuss it when you come to my station. Okay, so now if you will look over on the right-hand side, we're going to kind of jump ahead to right here where it's ways to describe data. Okay, there are several ways you can describe data. One way is talking about the centers, measures of center. Mean and median are both ways to describe the center of data. Okay, and when we talk about how spread out the data is, we would want to use the range or the IQR, which is the interquartile range, which we will talk about tomorrow. Okay, so I know that this is a huge review for you from 6th grade, so I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly, okay? So one way to talk about center is to find the mean. And another word, please, please, please take a moment to highlight. Let me see if I can get a highlighter. That mean and average are the same thing. Okay, mean and average, they mean the same thing. So to find the mean or the average, you're going to, and just like it says right here, right here, you're going to add up the values and then divide by the number of values. So for this one, I'm going to take all the numbers and to find the mean, I'm going to add them up. So 2 plus 1 plus 8 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 4, and I get 24. But 24 is not my average. It's not my mean. So then I'm going to take 24, and I'm going to count up how many numbers I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm going to divide 24 divided by 8, and I get 3. Okay? So that's mean. To find the mean, you're going to find the average. You're going to add them up and then divide by how many numbers. Okay? Median. What does median sound like? Yeah, that's right. It sounds like the middle number. So for this one, I'm going to the first step, before you can find the middle, it's not just go and find whichever number's in the middle. One of the very important things you've got to remember is you have got to, what it says right here, put the numbers in order from least to greatest first, okay? So this one, I've put them in order. So 3, then 5, then 9, then 9, then 12, then 13, then 17. Okay, so I'm going to put them in order least to greatest. Now, how would you find the middle number? So you probably remember from 6th grade that you just go through and you mark out that one, mark, 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 mark that one out, mark that one out. And then we have in the middle 9. Okay, so 9 is my median. Now, what happens when you get to the middle and there's not one middle number? Okay, that's when, so this one is another example. So we get to the middle and we put them in order least to greatest. Okay, so for a median, put them in order least to greatest, then find the number in the middle. So let's try that. Mark, 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 mark. Sorry, Miss Kearney can't do this very straight. And then I get to the middle, and do you see that there are 2 numbers there? Do you see that? There are these 2 numbers right here. Okay, so I need to actually find the middle of those. I've got to find the median of those. So 2 things, you could look and say, well, what's in between 2 and 3? Or you can find the average. And how do you find the average? Let's go back up here. What did it say to find the average? You're going to add them up and divide by how many numbers? Well, how many numbers are there? 2. So I'm going to do 2 plus 3, which is 5. And then 5 divided by 2, which is 3.5. So for that one, it would be 3.5. So let me write that in, 3.5. Okay. Now mode, what does mode sound like? Mode sounds like most, the number that occurs the most. So you're going to go through and you're going to figure out which one occurs the most. So let's look at this example. We have a list of numbers here, right here. And I want you to go through and I want you to find which one occurs the most. Which one do you see happens? So I see that there's only a 123. There are 1, 2, 3 34s. So 34 occurs 3 times. And I don't see anything else that occurs more than that. So my 34 would be my mode. Okay. And really quickly, I know this is kind of a long video. And when you get to me, it's going to be super quick. Okay. So what is the range of the data set? Range is the difference between the largest and smallest numbers, like a mountain range. When I think of a mountain range, I think of the high mountain and the low valley. So to find the the range, you're going to find the highest number, which is, so if I look right here, out of these number sets, which one's the highest? 21. And which one's the lowest? 5. So to find the range, we're going to find the difference between the highest and smallest. So 21 minus 5 is 16. And then the last thing, the outlier. An outlier is exactly what it sounds like. It lies outside by itself. It's an extreme value in a set that is outlying. Kind of like an outsider is someone who doesn't belong. An outlier is the number that doesn't belong. So when you look at these numbers and you put them in order least to greatest, which number do you see is kind of different than the rest of them? Which one doesn't really belong? That's right, the 12. Okay, so that is my outlier. So now once you're done with the video, guys, and I know I just kind of went through that really quickly, I would like for you to go back and do any of the practice problems. For example, I would like for you to come down to the bottom and I want you to try these down here, this practice. So when you come to my station, that's what we'll look at. Okay, so go back and rewatch anything that that I went too quickly over. Pause it where you need to pause it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have when you come to my station. So mean, add them up and divide by how many numbers, median the middle, mode the most, range is the high minus the low, and I can't wait to work with you when you come to my station. All right, good luck, guys. Make me proud. Peace out, rainbow trout. Love you, mean it.